So thank you for coming to the presentations. Today, I'm going to talk about how to counter attacks, exploit infrastructure. So before we start it, let me introduce our group. So I am Minn Papa, originally from Myanmar and currently working at Cybersecurity Laboratory of PwC, Japan. And the core researchers of these works are Hiroshi Kumagai and Masaki Kamizono from the same company, PwC, Japan, and Takahiro Kasama from NICT, Japan. So today, I'll be presenting on behalf of all of us. So firstly, let me start with the aim and the takeaways for you from these presentations. So the aim of this presentation is to know how to counterattack or how to take down the recent exploit kit. So at the end of this presentation, you will be able to know or learn what are the inner workings of the exploit kit attack infrastructures and what are the choke points in their attack infrastructure and what are the weaknesses and how to counterattack the recent exploit kit. So I expect a lot of questions from you at the end of these presentations, and so you can also disturb me anytime during the presentations if you have any questions or comment. So let me give you an example of how attackers are using the exploit kit. So as a recent trend, exploit kits as a service offerings are quite popular. So in order to start a campaign, attacker pays to the exploit kit operators in order to hire the attack infrastructure offered by them. So the attack infrastructure mainly includes panel servers, the proxies, and the landing servers, and the fingerprinting servers, and the browser exploits, different kind of browser exploit, and update servers, and database servers, and API servers, and more, so many different servers. So in order to get the web traffic redirected to so attacker just only needs to upload the malware he would like to use for the campaign to the attack infrastructure, especially to the panel server through the web interface. So in order to get the web traffic redirected to the exploit servers in the attack infrastructures, attackers recently they abuse the traffic direction system service. So they pay to the traffic direction system service, which is also called as the TDS system. So they pay for this service, and so TDS redirect the victims to the servers in the attack infrastructure. So the victims' web traffic comes to the attack infrastructure, and the victim is exploited, especially through the browser. And then finally, the malware is downloaded to the victim, and the malware infected. So this is the recent trend, how the attackers are using the exploit kit as a service offering. So the exploit kit operators here, behind these exploit kits, controlling these exploit kit attack infrastructure, they want to provide better services to their customers, and while hiding their attack infrastructures, of course, they would like to hide their attack infrastructure detecting from the security researcher like us. So they put more and more effort and put so many different kinds of servers, such as proxies or APIs or or update servers, or VDS, or also called landing servers. So this exploit kit attack infrastructure is getting confused during this recently, and this complex setup made it very difficult for researchers to analyze the inner workings of this exploit kit network infrastructure. Thus, it limits the ability to the information security community to respond to such threats. But we believe that this customer-facing approach might have a vulnerability or might have the weak point, or this might lead to expose the exploit kit operator to us, or this might lead to the takedown of the exploit kit attack infrastructure. Maybe just nothing but a customer privilege. So we believe this, and so we mainly focus on analyzing the exploit kit attack infrastructure in this study. So how we do the research is very simple. So we collected many different leak exploit kits. So we are able to collect more than 33 different exploit kits, which source code are leaked, especially in the underground forums. And we made a detailed analysis on the source code, and we choose these 4 exploit kits to redeploy their attack infrastructure in our lab environment. So these are rig 2, the second one is BEPS or Sundown exploit kit, and the third is Hunter and Neptune exploit kit. So we redeploy their attack every servers in our lab environments. We choose this exploit kit because the updated version of this exploit kit, colored green here, are currently very highly active and currently very popular exploit kits among the attackers. So in our study, we analyzed the inner workings of the leak exploit kits, and we know their weak points, and we even know what are the choke points or what are the main servers we can attack in their attack infrastructure. So with this base knowledge, in this study, we also demonstrate or use our knowledge to counterattack the latest exploit kit, which is rig 4. So I will show you the detailed analysis on these 4 leak exploit kits, and I will show you how we try to attack to the latest rig 4 exploit kit. So from here, this will be the outline of these presentations. So first, we will get into their inner workings, and then we will go to discuss on potential attacks, and we demonstrate the attack using the rig version 4 exploit kit, and we will discuss you that this attack we propose today might be able to use for the future exploit kit as well. So let's get into rig 2 exploit kit, which is the leak exploit kit in 2015. So we made a detailed analysis on the lead source code and redeploy the attack infrastructure of rig 2 exploit kit in our lab environment. So we mainly found 4 main different servers exist in the attack environment, which are the panel server, the proxy server, the second one, and the third one is the VDS server, is the virtual dedicated server, also called the landing server. And the fourth server is a traffic direction system servers. So these 4 different servers mainly works in the attack infrastructure of rig 2 exploit kit. By the way, the lab sites in the figure is the login page to rig2 exploit kit. So let's take a look at the admin account. So this is the admin account of the exploit kit operator. So the admin can check the statistics on how many victims are compromised using what kind of exploit, and these victims are from which countries. And here below is the name of the actual attackers using the rig2 exploit kit in order to infect the victims or using to start a campaign. So this is also the admin account. At the panel server, the administrator or the exploit kit operator can set up the VDS server IP or URL here. And the VDS server is the landing page. So if somebody comes to this, if some victims comes to this server, the victims will be exploited. So this is the VDS settings. And the administrator can also control the proxy domains through the web panel. So these are the proxy server domains used for the rig2 exploit kit. From now on, I will show you the user account. So if you are the attacker, or if you are using the exploit kit as a service offerings, then you will get the page something like this as a user to the exploit kit as a service offering. So the attacker can check the statistics and how many victims he already compromised, from which countries, and what is the rate of the exploit. Especially it's here. They care the rate. So the rate is out of all victims accessing to their landing servers, how many are actually exploited. So this is the rate. And also the attacker can upload the malware, also called as payload, to the this panel server through this interface. And after uploading the malware to the panel server, attackers can generate the API link, something like this. I will show you the detailed explanations on how this API link is used by attacker later. So here in this slide, please note that one attacker, one registered attacker, can upload at most 2 executable file or 2 malware file, and can generate 2 API URL clicking these buttons, and he will get a URL something like this, and the URL is, the domain will be the panel server domain, and this is the API token. For example, this is an example API token. He will get something like this. And here, the attacker can also click the IP list button here. So this IP, if you click this IP list button, this is for whitelisting the server from where API is only accessible. So this is what is inside the leak database of the rig2 exploit kit. So I summarize the tables here. So these are the name of the table in the database, and this is the table structure and some example data and the number of rows in each data. So if you take a look at this, you will notice that the traffics table here, the traffics, it contains more than 6,000 rows of the, this is all about the information of the victim compromised. So we take a look at this traffic table and make the analysis on this traffic table. So these are some of the summaries. So rig2 exploit is used by attacker in order to infect the malware or in order to compromise the computers in more than 75 countries or more than 6,000 IP addresses. And Italy, US, and Singapore, together with the IP count, are the topmost country targeted by rig2 exploit. And IE11 and Windows 7 are the top browser and operating system and highly exploited by using the rig2 exploit. And here we have some of the data, and this is the actual proxy server domain. So while we analyze or while we redeploy this attack infrastructure in our environment, we did the analysis in June 2017 last year. So these are some of the domains are still alive in that time and resolving to this one single IP address from Russia. So from now on, I will give you a detailed explanations on the inner workings of rig2 exploit, which is the actual attack insights of the actual attack infrastructure. So rig2 exploit has a panel server. The panel server, where the web application is mainly running in the panel servers, and the panel server has functions to control the other servers in the attack infrastructure, and panel server can also manage, of course, the admin account of the panel server, manage the users. Of course, the users are attackers. So the attack infrastructure, another server in the attack infrastructure is the VDS server, which is the actual landing server. VDS is the virtual dedicated server. And the next server is the proxy server. So in the leak exploit kit, we have the code for the panel server and also proxy server, and we don't have the code for the VDS server. But while we check the detail analysis, while we make a detailed analysis on the code, we found out that there must have a panel VDS server, and in addition, there must have a TDS server, which is a traffic direction system server in their attack infrastructure. So these are four main attack infrastructure in the attack infrastructure. So let's take a look at how a victim is malware infected. So this is the victim. So this will be the browser, and one victim browser access to the malicious site, and the malicious site redirect the victim to the TDS server, and the TDS server here update or get the proxy server this proxy server URL from the panel server using the API I showed you previously. So the TDS server connect to the panel server with API and get the latest URL of the proxy server domain. So using this information received from the panel server, the victim is redirected to the proxy server here. So the main function of proxy server is just proxying the traffic between the victim and the VDS server, which is the actual landing server. So the proxy server, what it is doing, another function is it receives some of the parameters from the victim URL and then decrypt this parameter, and then the proxy knows the domain of the BDS servers. He should redirect, he should forward the traffic. So the proxy is just proxying the traffic between the victim and the VDS server. And the VDS server here is the main PHP script here. It's a corridor PHP. So this script fingerprint the victim's environment what kind of browser or what kind of OS or such kind of such data. So the core.php fingerprint the victim information, and so the victim is fingerprinted, and according to the victim environment, the appropriate exploit is served to the victim, and the victim browser is exploited. And the various update this information, the victim's information, to the panel server. And if I say specifically, it's connecting to the download.php file here, and it passes the fingerprinted information. And what download.php is doing is it's tried to get the appropriate payload or malware for the victim. And finally, the malware, also called as payload, is downloaded to the victim, and the victim is malware infected. So this is how the exploit kits attack infrastructure, the servers in the attack infrastructure worked together to exploit the victims or to infect the victim with malware. So we redeploy this whole infrastructure in our lab environment. And we take a look at what are the vulnerable points and what are the weaknesses and what kind of weaknesses we can take advantage to take down such kind of infrastructure, such kind of exploit kit. So we found out some weaknesses in this API control. And with this weakness, it might be able to take down the proxy server here. So this is what we find out from analyzing RIG2 leak exploit kit. And so using this knowledge, we would like to use this knowledge, whether it is able to use this to the latest version of RIG exploit kit, which is RIG4 exploit kit. So before it, let me give you an explanations on how we will go for the attacks. So we can actually decoy the proxy server domains or IP addresses. So this is the API URL. So this API URL is actually using here. So as an attacker or as a registered user, if he or she use this API URL, he can generate a lot of proxy server URL, something like this. And so accessing this API several times generate more and more and more and more proxy server URL, and it can make the exhaustion of generating the proxy server. So this might lead to takedown of the proxy server, we think. So we use this knowledge and try to attack the RIG4 exploit kit, currently the latest and the most popular exploit kit. So let's take a look at RIG4 exploit kit from now on. So this is the login page to the RIG4 exploit kit. It's currently running on the rigprev.com. So if you access through this site, you will know this login page. You will find out. And of course, this server is hidden behind the Cloudflare DDoS protection service. And RIG4 exploit kit actually active last year, September. So it's mostly used by the attackers for the campaign, mostly the cryptocurrency miner malware. So the attacker used RIG4 exploit kit to infect the victim with the cryptocurrency miner software. So this will be the user interface for the attacker. So attacker can check the statistics, something like this. And this is the place where the attacker can upload their malware to the panel server. And after uploading the malware, attackers can generate a link, clicking this API link here. So clicking this, attackers can generate the API link. So this API will be used later for updating the proxy server domains. And this is the place where the TDS server or Traffic Direction System server IP can be whitelisted here. So this is how API link is generated. So after uploading the malware, clicking this button, attackers can generate this API token link. And this is the detailed attack infrastructure of the RIG-4 exploit kit. It's mostly the same as RIG-2 exploit kit, but so what is the difference is here. The RIG-4 exploit kit has two different API server and the panel server, one more server here. And so previously in the old version, they don't have a different API server. Here, RIG-4, they have a separate API server. And the second difference is the fingerprint server here. So I will give you a simple example or a simple flow how a victim is malware infected. So as I explained previously, firstly, this is the victim browser. So the victim access to the malicious site, and the malicious sites redirect the victims to the Traffic Direction System server, TDS server, in second step. So TDS used the API link previously generated and update the proxy server information with the panel server, API server. And using this information, TDS redirect the victim to the two servers. The first one is the fingerprint server. So this server, by the way, it's a Singapore IP address. So this server fingerprint the browser information or OS information of the victim. And then the victim is also redirected to the proxy server here. So the proxy server is just proxying the traffic between the victim and the real landing server here. So according to the fingerprinted victim information, the victim will be exploited, and this information will be updated to the panel server. And finally, the appropriate payload for the victim is downloaded from the panel server, and the victim is malware infected. So this is how the RIG-4 exploit kit's attack infrastructure works. So we made the detailed analysis on this attack infrastructure, and we found out weaknesses, and these weaknesses leads to the takedown of RIG-4 exploit kit. And from now on, I will give you a detailed explanation on what are the weak points or what are the weaknesses we can take advantage, and with these weaknesses, what kind of servers will be able to take down. So the first weakness is, as I discussed you previously, the first weakness we found out is at the API control. So we found out two different types of weakness, and this weak point might lead to the takedown of the proxy server. So basically, the TDS server connects to the API server, and so a customer uses the API link, and he can access to the API server as much as he wants and generate the proxy server's domain as much as possible, and this can lead to the exhaustion of the proxy server's domain. So I will give you a detailed explanation later and how we can attack. And we also found out the weaknesses on the panel server. We found out 3 different kinds of weaknesses on the panel server. And these weaknesses might lead to the takedown of the panel server itself in their attack infrastructure. And the third server, of course, we know that's the IP address of the fingerprint server, and this might also lead to the takedown of the fingerprint server as well. So from now on, I will give you these 5 different attacks we tried to the RIG-4 exploit kit attack infrastructure. So let's take a look at the first attack. The first one is, as an attacker or the register user, he or she has the API link. This is the real API link, so something like that. And he can access to the API server, especially running on this IP, API server, and connect to this API server with his or her API token and generate a proxy server URL. So this is a real proxy server, real IP and real URL. And accessing this API server, the register user can generate a lot of proxy servers URL. So we try this, and this kind of attack is like accessing this API server several times and generating many different proxy server domains and making the exhaustions on generating the proxy URL. So this is the first attack, and so we keep on accessing to the API server several times a day and generate so many different proxy server URL. So this is analysis result for 1 month. So from 22nd February to 28th March. And this figure shows the count of the unique IP addresses, unique proxy server IP addresses we can generate for each day. So if you take a look at this, you will find out that on 16th of March, we got more than 25 IP addresses. And within 1 month of analysis, we got 313 IP addresses of the proxy server, so which might lead to takedown of these proxy IP addresses. And we take a look at how these proxies domains are generated. So we didn't find any pattern, so we think that the proxy IP addresses are generated randomly. And all the IP addresses are hosted in Russia. And this is the hosting service, hosting all the proxy server IP addresses, all these 313 IP addresses. So we think that we would like to know that these proxy server IP addresses are shared among different attackers or not. So we have this kind of burning research questions in our mind. And so we take a look at whether all the IP addresses we collected here are also exposed or also used by other attackers. So we take a look at on internet and find out so many reports. And here in this ektracker.com, where the IP addresses of the proxies by other researchers or other communities are shared. So we take a look at this is a RIG exploit kit, IP addresses per day, and these are the actual proxy server IP addresses shared by them. And all the proxy we collect also match with these all IP addresses. So from this, we can say that attackers share the IP addresses of the attacker using the same RIG-4 exploit kit attack infrastructure share the IP addresses of the proxy servers. And so match all IP addresses. And here, if you take a look at, you can find out that for per day, the peak number of the unique IP count is 25 IP, and it's also same as what we see in our environment also. So we think that this is the 25 IP is the peak number of IP address they can generate per day. So this is the first attack. So we can decoy a lot of proxy, or we can collect a lot of proxy server IP addresses through API, using this API, and we can make the exhaustions on the generating of the proxy, and this might lead to takedown of the proxy server IP addresses. So let's get into the second attack. So this is the attack infrastructure I already explained you previously. So in this attack infrastructure, we found out a weakness in this API server, the second weakness. So the weak point is that this API server, API server doesn't have the sufficient authentication of the registered user. So with this weakness, a registered user or attacker can generate a lot of proxy server IP addresses even after their subscription period. So this is the second weak point at the authentication part of the API server. And with this weak point, one registered user or attacker can generate a lot of proxy domain with API all the time, even after the subscription period. So the third kind of weakness is that here is the interface to the panel server of RIG-4 exploit kit. And here, if you take a look at it, here is a place where you can set up IP address or URL. So this IP address or URL is actually it's written as auto update. So this is for updating the malware or the payload. So the attacker can automatically update the latest version of their malware, setting up the IP address here. So we try to set up our IP address here. And after a while, we found out some interesting thing that one IP address, this is a log of the web servers, so our servers, one IP address here, this IP is connecting to our server for every 10 minutes. It's connecting us. And so it's interesting why this server is interesting and what this server is running for. Maybe this is for checking the update. So we try to reconnect back to this IP address, and we found out interesting point that actually this server is the actual IP address of the panel server hidden behind the Cloudflare DDoS protection service. So this is the actual IP of the panel server of RIG-4 exploit kit. So actually we can take down to this IP address. So the fourth weak point is we have a knowledge of analyzing the RIG-2, the leak exploit kit, and using this knowledge, we make some directory listing on RIG-4 panel server, and so we make some directory listing on the panel servers, and these are some of the directory, and we can see insights of this directory of RIG-4 panel server. And the fifth weak point and attack is we can actually see the data of the attackers And according to the user ID, we can guess that there are 400 attackers using rig exploit kit panel server, so rig exploit kits as a service offerings. And according to the vulnerability or weak points in their web application of running on the panel server, we can take a look at the 21 attackers data. So this is quite small, but this is the statistics for 4 attackers. And here is the browser or OS, number of OS, and number of countries for a particular user exploiting. So it is very difficult to see from here. So I summarized the data of all 21 attackers in this table. So here is the floor ID of the actual attacker using the rig4 exploit kit attack infrastructure. And here are the top countries these attackers are targeted. And this is the count of the IP address, the third column. So you can see that some attacker, they have more than 700,000 IP addresses of the victims redirected to their servers in the attack infrastructure. And the fourth column is the IP count of the exploited IP count of the victim. So out of these IP addresses accessing to the attack infrastructure, this number of IP addresses are actually exploited and malware infected. So this will be the rate of the, each attacker. And the another columns are the top browser targeted by the attackers and the top operating system. And these are the count of the referral domain used by the attacker. And these are the count of the type of exploit. So many different browser exploits are there. So count of the type of the exploit. And in total, for the 21 user, we found out that are more than almost 900,000 IP addresses of the victim access to the attack infrastructure of rig4 exploit kit. And out of these IP addresses, more than 100,000 IP addresses are malware infected. So the exploit rate is 12.4, and they use referral domains, 108 unique referral domains. And these are the total of the exploit. So we share these referral domains and the detailed explanation of this data in our white paper. So if you're interested, you can take a look at our white paper and see at the appendix sections the IP addresses and referral domain. This might be able to use as an SOC. So till here, I already discussed 5 different attacks to the rig4 exploit kit. So we can decoy the proxy IP with the customer privilege, and we can generate so many proxies, and this might lead to takedown of the proxy server, and we can reveal the hidden IP of the actual panel servers, and we can see some of the directories and take a look at the data of the actual attackers. So I have one interesting number to show you. Do you know what is it? Can you guess? Yes, this is the income of the exploit kit operator. So we got the Bitcoin address of the exploit kit operator behind the rig4 exploit kit. And we check this Bitcoin address through the blockchain, and we found out that this is the number of transactions, and this is the total received Bitcoin amount. And if we, so from this Bitcoin amount is equal to, it's approximately about 7.8 million US dollar. So they are the rich. And the second data here, this is also the income of the Bitcoin account. So this is from 2014 September to 2018 February. And did you find something interesting from this figure? Okay. Here, whenever a new version come out, we have a lot of income. And so here, a bit high, the new version. And we think that this is maybe between rig version 1 and 2, maybe. This is just for your info. So till here, I already discussed and how we redeploy and analyze the rig2 exploit kit, which is the leak exploit kit. And we use this knowledge and try to attack to the latest rig4 exploit kit. And I already presented 5 different attacks. This might lead to the takedown of the rig4 exploit kit till here. So from now on, I would like to move to the other exploit kit, which are the BEPS, also called as Sundown, and the Hunter and Neptune exploit kit. So let's take a look at the attack infrastructure of these 3 exploit kits first. So this is the BEPS or Sundown's exploit kit attack infrastructure, and this exploit kit, actually the source code is leaked last year, 2017 February, I think, 2017. So the attack infrastructure is almost same as rig exploit kit. And what is the main difference is here. So if you take a look at it, this is domain registration. So in BEPS or Sundown exploit kit attack infrastructure, they have functions to make the automated domain registrations. These are the domains of their proxy server. So they automatically register their proxy server domain using the Namecheap DNS server service. And they also use the cloud DNS because in order to control this domain, they have the authoritative name server. So the authoritative name server is a cloud DNS server service, DNS service. So they use DNS servers and controlling or changing their proxy server domains. So this is the main difference of BEPS exploit kits. And others attack flow is almost same. So victim access to the malicious sites and redirected through the TDS and generates the updated using the API, get the proxy server IP or domain, and the victim is redirected. And this is the actual landing server. So the proxy server proxying the traffic between these, and the victim is exploited, and finally the malware is downloaded, and the victim is malware infected. So it's almost same as rigged exploit kit. And okay, let's go to another exploit kit attack infrastructure. So another one is the Hunter exploit kit. So this is quite simple, and Hunter exploit kit is sold as a package in the underground forum or underground site. And this is their panel server and landing page. So the panel servers and landing page, according to the leak source code, we found out that the panel servers and landing page exist on the same servers. So this might be very easy to detect the panel servers domains or IP, we think. And so they also have an update server behind. So the update server is like attacker who buy the exploit key as a package. This is different, not a service offering. So attacker who buy this exploit kit as a package can update the package. So connect to the update servers here. And the attack flow or how the victim is infected is very simple. So the victim access to the compromised site and then redirected to the landing server, and the victim is exploited, and finally the payload is downloaded and the victim is malware infected. And this is another exploit kit attack infrastructure, which is a Neptune exploit kit. So this is also as a exploit kit sold as a package. And here, one interesting point is they have a landing server and the panel server. And between these two servers, there is an uploader server, and this server function is receiving the latest payload from here, from the panel server, and this payload is posted to the landing server, and finally the victim is compromised. So according to time limitation, we just discussed the attack infrastructure of these three exploit kits, and in the white paper, we have a detailed explanations on what are the weak points and how we can attack to this exploit kit as well. So this is the last part, and we have a burning question, research question again. So the question is that the attack methods we discussed today are able to use for other exploit kits as well. So the answer to this question is yes, because we found out the similarity in the attack infrastructure of many different exploit kits, and we also found out that there is a highly code reuse among different exploit kits. So these are all the leak exploit kits we collected from many different places, and we analyzed this exploit kit source code very well, and we found out that almost all these exploit kit attack infrastructure, we found out two different types of attack infrastructure. So this is like all these exploit kit attack infrastructure, they have a very simple attack infrastructure. Like they only have some panel server, exploits, payloads, and the database. And these are the new days exploit kits share almost the same design of the attack infrastructure. So we believe that the attack methods we propose today can also be used for another exploit kit as well. And another point we found out is that the code reuse among different exploit kits. So this is the same code between the 4 different exploit kits, and this is between Demo Handler and Bleeding Life exploit kits. And this is the code reused between the IcePack or Tor exploit kits. So with this heavy code reuse feature, we also think that the attack we propose today might also be used for other exploit kits as well. So if we group all the exploit kit, leak exploit kits, we can group 33 leak exploit kits into 7 main groups like this. And you can take a look at the detailed explanation in the white paper also. So let's get into the conclusion. So as a final takeaway for you, what we learned together from this research is that the attack infrastructure of exploit kits nowadays are quite complex. And the more complex it is, we think that the more there we have vulnerabilities. This might lead to the takedown of the exploit kit. So this is what we learned together. And from our analysis, we found out that the attack method we propose today can also be used for other exploit kits as well, because they have a heavy code reuse and they share the similar attack infrastructure between the different exploit kits. So this is the final conclusion. And if you have any question, I'll be happy. And you can ask me in Japanese or English or Burmese, any language. So welcome to the questions. Or comment, it's okay. Yes. So the question is, during the research, the exploit kit, whether the exploit kit target the mobile phone or not. So this is the question. So the answer is yes. We found out that one rig exploit kit actually target to the mobile as well. I think I'm right. Okay? So the question is whether the victim, the exploit served to the victims are 0 day or not 0 day. Yes? So we found both. And it depends on what exploit kit we analyze. But if I remember correctly, I think that the Hunter exploit kit, they serve a lot of 0 day exploits. So other exploit, rig exploit kits, I found 1 0 day exploit also. So this will, is it okay? It answers your question? Okay. So we found out both 0 day or non-0 day. So the question is the code quality. So we think it's bad because so many vulnerable. Thank you. Any other? Okay. If no, then if you have any other questions later, you can email to us. This is the group. So thank you for coming to this presentation.